Hi, my name is Kaleb, and I am pastor at the Free Methodist Church, and I want to help you with meditation on Scripture. That's one thing that we are trying to renew or start new in our church is something that's going to invest in our spiritual life, and meditation is a great way to let words from the Bible, words of God, words from the stories of Jesus's life go from here. I'm pointing to my heart to here, to our heart. And the more that it seeps from just like reading to a personal, in-depth feeling and heart piece, the more it's actually going to get moved out into our hands and affect the world and affect your family and affect your relationships in a way that is going to be for the better. Because most people are 3,000 verses overweight, including me. All my life, I've been reading Scripture. And people might, on the outside, look, well, he's not that much different than me, except that I have 3,000 verses that are in my belly that I have yet to act out and yet to make more real and more personal. And I want to help you get lean and mean and a fighting machine so that the Scripture doesn't just, fill you up, but it fills you out. So in order to do that well, meditation is one of those ways. And what we're going to practice today is called Lectio Divina. That is spiritual reading. And I'm laughing because my son...
I'm doing a video too on Seesaw.
He's doing a video too. While I'm doing a video, I just got to show you that he introduced himself. Hi, I'm Pastor James. Anyway, I'm going to read Scripture. I'm going to read Scripture a couple times. So when you do Lectio Divina, you just get a small passage of Scripture. Sometimes it's one verse. Sometimes it's a couple verses, maybe as long as 10 or 11. That's about it. I'll read it once, and then I'll read it again right after. And I really want you to begin to listen and slow everything down and start to let these words seep in a little bit more. And the idea is to let everything else be centered on the text. Let everything you think about, everything you feel about be centered on the text. And at that point, there might be a few words or a thought or a phrase that really jumps out or becomes interesting. And then I'll tell you what to do from then on. So I'm going to read it 2 times, and I'm going to read it slowly. And this is Matthew chapter 9, verse 14 through 17. It's only 3 verses. So let me read this. One day, the disciples of John the Baptist came to Jesus and asked him, "Why don't your disciples fast like we do and the Pharisees do?" Jesus replied, "Do wedding guests mourn while celebrating with the groom? Of course not. But someday the groom will be taken away from them, and then they will fast. Besides, who would patch old clothing with new cloth? For the new patch would shrink and rip away from the old cloth, leaving an even bigger tear than before. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins, for the old wineskins would burst from the pressure, spilling the wine and ruining the skins. New wine is stored in new wineskins so that both are preserved." I'm going to read it again. If there was a word or a phrase or a thought or a question that came to mind, I want you to really dial in on that as I read again. Maybe start imagining this picture of Jesus talking to these disciples, these followers, but also his metaphors he used. Start imagining and start thinking what that would look like and envision that. One day, the disciples of John the Baptist came to Jesus and asked him, "Why don't your disciples fast like we do and the Pharisees do?" Jesus replied, "Do wedding guests mourn while celebrating with the groom? Of course not. But someday the groom will be taken away from them, and then they will fast. Besides, who would patch old clothing with new cloth? For the new patch would shrink and rip away from the old cloth, leaving an even bigger tear than before. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins, for the old skins would burst from the pressure, spilling the wine and ruining the skins. New wine is stored in new wineskins so that both are preserved." Now, this would be the moment, maybe you have a journal. This would be a great time to just write a few things that maybe you thought through or thought of while reading this. Maybe there's a word that came to mind and you just I want you to focus on that word and begin to write about it. Right now, I had a conversation yesterday with a senior in our church, and she shared about this passage with me because we spoke on it on Sunday. And she said she felt like an old wineskin bursting. And so as I'm reading this and I see the word bursting or the pressure on there, I just think of a lot of our seniors in our church and how this corona, this pandemic, this virus, the way we're doing church now, online and digital and all those things, she says she's feeling this pressure, like she's being pressured, like about to burst. And just that visual came to my mind. And for you, maybe it's different. Maybe it's a different word. Maybe it's just an image. Maybe it's a patch or that new cloth. And maybe it's geared towards your family. You're thinking about your family or your workplace or maybe your personal life. I'm going to read it one more time. And as I read it one last time, keep thinking about that image, about that thought. And I want you to ask God, what is that word for you today? What is that word for you maybe this week? What is that phrase that he's like maybe highlighting in this text? What does that look like, for your day today? And I want that to be the focus as I read through this. And I want you to start asking, how does this affect this part of my life? How does this impact my part of life? So one more time. One day, the disciples of John the Baptist came to Jesus and asked him, "Why don't your disciples fast like we do and the Pharisees do?" Jesus replied, "Do wedding guests mourn while celebrating with the groom? Of course not. But someday the groom will be taken away from them, and then they will fast. Besides, who would patch old clothing with new cloth? For the new patch would shrink away and rip away from the old cloth, leaving an even bigger tear than before. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins, for the old skins would burst from the pressure, spilling the wine and ruining the skins. New wine is stored in new wineskins so that both are preserved." As I was reading that, the one thing I felt like God was kind of speaking to me was how can maybe I help those that are feeling the pressure. Maybe reach out to some of our seniors, especially feeling this, or anyone that's engaged with this pandemic and virus and how it's affecting them. But how can I reach out and maybe ease that pressure? Maybe let them kind of vent a little or rant a little, or maybe I can help provide a new wineskin. I don't know. But that's kind of one thing that, just reading it this time over, just feeling like God might be leading me to do today and this week. Hey, well, I hope that was helpful for you. It's called Lectio Divina. You can use it with any passage of scripture for the most part. I would suggest words and teachings and parables of Jesus. Those are the best ones to use because those are the ones we really want to transform us, the words from Jesus's time on planet Earth. Well, hey, hope this helped you grow a little bit in your spiritual life. Until next time, we'll see you later.